I think so. I think it was a good experience because it was a brand new school. I think the kids grew to sort of respect the amenities and not to abuse it. And we had a very good staff there. Mm-hmm. They were all very young. They were very cosmopolitan. Most of them graduates from St Andrews University, which was a very cosmopolitan university anyway. We had Americans, we had West Indians, we had Canadians, English teachers, very few actual Scots, to be honest. Mm. And they were very creative and innovative, enthusiastic, and I think that rubbed off on the kids.
Mm-hmm. You eventually became principal assistant and careers master at Kirkton High School. Mm-hmm. Even so, first of all, what does that mean? Tell me, as principal assistant and careers master, what did you do?
Well, it was just climbing up the promotion ladder. In Scotland, education was very different from in England. You were either a head of department or you were an ordinary teacher. Okay. And they just introduced this thing where I think it was an incentive to whatever, but they made you first a principal assistant, and that gave me a slight salary increase. And then careers master was a real challenge. I can remember taking the kids to a big party of leavers, and we'd take them out to, say, a garage. And they were, in the garage, they would show the kids how it involved auto mechanics and everything else. But at the end of it, they used to line the kids up in a wall and shake them down, and all the tools would fall out their pockets. Well, these kids would steal the bridle off a nightmare.
Interesting is not the word. Any of them end up being auto mechanics?
Oh, I'm sure they did, yes.
Yeah.
And they had an industrial estate in Dundee,
okay,
to which we were frequently invited. And Dundee is famous for what's called the 3 J's, which is jute, jam, Keeler's jam, and journalism, because the Thompson family that produced so many comics and so on came from Dundee. So I would take the kids there, and they got really interested. It was a good way of introducing them to jobs at that time.
Let me ask you, because you said your contemporaries followed the usual line of law and medicine and accounting. Was it the same for those kids that you taught?
Some of them, it was a comprehensive school, and it was co-educational. So you had top streams, and you had kids that we used to call marginally motivated. Mm-hmm. And they were rough kids. But no, it was an industrial city, so there was employment. They found jobs, some of them the professions, some of them went to college. A couple of them became good soccer players, professional players, I remember. Mm-hmm. And
talking about soccer and sports, you and boxing, no thought at all that you would go professional? You ever think you'd go professional?
No, not at all, no. The amateur game and the boxing professional are two totally different things. It's like wrestling, very, very different.
I am sure it is, but you never thought you could earn a living boxing?
I trained with professionals. In fact, there was a professional boxer who won the British and European lightweight titles, and he used to use me as a sparring partner when he came up to Aberdeen. We used to go running in the Grampian Mountains and spar a lot together. So I learned a lot from him, fighting professional.
And enough to know not to go professional. Yeah. You were actually middleweight champion in college?
No, I was welterweight.
Welterweight champion?
140 pounds to 147.
Welterweight champion.
Yeah.
None of your kids try to challenge you?
No.
To say, listen, they respected it enough to leave well enough alone?
Yeah, I never had physical confrontations with students, no. Sometimes with parents.
Not with children,
Not with the kids, no.
Your 5 years is up, because you gave yourself 5 years to teach. 5 years is up. No thought of remaining there at Kirkton High School. You're going to go to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't going to go to the Bahamas. You're going to go to
going to
Africa.
Africa originally, yeah, but then...
And so, tell me again, because I don't remember. How did the Bahamas get involved here?
it was really the West Indies, the idea of the West Indies.
Yeah.
I know the Bahamas are not part of the West Indies, but in those days, in Scotland, that's what they think of it.
For the purposes of this discussion,
Yes.
it will
so,
be.
And also because I'd been born in the East Indies, the West was the other side, but it seemed to me to be a similar climate and that I would enjoy it. And I saw this advertisement in the Times Educational Supplement for Head of English at Queen's College and applied for that, and that was it.
No problem at all. You applied for it and they said, Kelty, we welcome you. Come to the Bahamas.
I went down to London and I was interviewed in Marylebone House, which is just along from Madame Tussauds. It was the Methodist missionary offices down there. And had a very good interview, and that was it.
The rest is history, eh? You end up coming to Queen's College. This is the middle of the 60s now. This is what, 65, 66?
66.
This is an interesting time because I'm in St. Augustine's at that point.
St. Disgustings, we used to call you.
I know, up on the hill.
Right.
This is, everything is happening in the 60s. Certainly the Black Power revolution is going on. And how did you make it through the 60s? Did that,
well,
it
was a very, very exciting time at Queen's College, to be honest, because it had been an all-white school, and the first Geoffrey Litherland, who was before me, and then the Reverend Neville Stewart came with the purpose of integrating the school. So when I first went there, we had a population of just over 400 in the high school. In 5 years' time, it had doubled to nearly 900, and we had about, say, 60-40% split, 60% black children, white, and 40% white children. So, and it all went very smoothly, except Rev Nev, as they used to call him, he got into political hot water, and there was a lot of trouble when he was withdrawn.
But other than that, that was...
No, the best 5 years of my life, I loved it. At that time, though, the top school was Government High School. Government High was the creme de la creme.
Okay,
no, seriously,
you're my guest tonight. I can't argue with you.
they were really the creme de la creme. SAC was always the best at sports, certainly in the 60s. But GHS was the only team that played soccer. SAC didn't play soccer in those days.
Nah, so, we started in '66, and that was not a very pleasant experience. But
no, that's right. No, because our first games were always just QC and Government High, and then the Kiwanis brought in the Kiwanis Cup, and because I used to coach the soccer teams at QC, and we were the first winners of the Kiwanis Cup. And
you had, go ahead, you finish your thought, and then I'm going to ask you something.
No,
else.
I really enjoyed the games we played against Government High and St. Augustine's, and then later St. John's and St. Anne's used to come on, but these were the three big ones.
Yeah. You had students in Queen's College from the Family Islands. Was having to deal with them, was your interaction with them any different because they were from the Family Islands as opposed to the students from
They were the very best that we had. We had an Out Island hostel, as it was called then.
Yes.
We called it the Out Islands then. And we had 50 boys and 50 girls in the hostel. And they were unique because they were a captive part of the thing. So that when you put on plays and when you had after-school games and coaching, they were always there. In the other schools, parents came at 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, picked up the kids and went off. So extracurricular clubs and so on didn't really catch on too much because the kids had to go home.
Yeah.
But with 100 students, captive students in a sense, it meant that you could put on plays, and I remember starting up a youth club, and the Family Island kids were just, they were the best, they really were. So they were just the leaders and everything, and a lot of them did very well.
And I always talk about this, we talk about it, period. Different environment on the Family Islands contributed to what you ended up with?
Yes.
Even before you were done with them?
Yeah. But in those days, Nassau was very similar to the family island, you know. I mean, you didn't lock cars or anything. You could leave your lawnmower out in the yard and nobody would steal it. You didn't have, and I remember in those days going down to Jamaica, for example, and being appalled at bars being on windows and thinking these people are captives in their own homes. That'll never happen here. Seriously, I mean, in those days, who was going to steal a car on a small island like this?
True.
So in those days, there wasn't that much of a difference, but unquestionably, the family islands represents, I would think, maybe the best of the old Bahamas, the friendly spirit,
yes.
You know, the...
Mm-hmm. You end up, you remain at QC for 17 years.
No, 15 years.
15
years, yeah.
15 years. And then you get another offer, or are you looking?
No, I wasn't. I was very, very happy at QC. After the Neville Stewart turmoil in '71, I was acting principal for a few months, for almost a year actually, and then I became vice principal. And though I was now in a desk job doing administration, I still taught all the time. I insisted keeping, because that was the thing that kept me sane. I loved the teaching part of it. But they had the Bahamianization process was going on, and I had applied for Bahamian citizenship in '73, but these things took a long, long time. So it was part of the Bahamianization thing, and I had taught Phil Cash, who was being groomed to be the headmaster, and he was going to be a very good headmaster. Reverend Charles Sweeting was there as well. So I didn't have any problem with stepping down
with
hoping
stepping
that,
down. We're going to talk about that some more. Keep your thought, because we got to take a break, I'm told, and we'll be back with more legends after this. Welcome back. I'm Anthony Newbold. You're watching Legends Whence We Came. My guest this evening is Mr. Roger Kelty, who's been involved in education in the Bahamas for 39 years. I don't want to leave QC as yet, even though we started to talk about you having spent 15 years there. Tell me about some of the things you remember. In 15 years, you must have touched a lot of lives at QC.
QC, the 15 years I spent at QC were, I probably think, the highlight of my life. I really enjoyed it there. And I still have a very warm affection for them. In fact, I'm still on the board of trustees for the QC Foundation, and I enjoy going to the school and just mingling with the kids again. It was a very happy time for me. But so many things happened. They had moved in 1965 from the old Trinity Church setting to the new campus that they had on Village Road. And there was just an enormous amount of development over the first 5 years, thanks in part to Neville Stewart's dynamism. Whatever anyone says about it, he was a very dynamic man. He got things done, and he was an excellent leader. So there was the integration part of it, which was good and exciting. There was buildings which went up, new laboratories. We got a new library, a new quadrangle, and a lot happened in the first five years. After that, a new principal came in. Hayden Middleton was his name, and he was another fine man. He sort of poured oil in the troubled waters, and he was a more laid-back individual. He didn't press the forefront, and he just quietened things down and got things back in a stable bank.
Status quo.
Yes, and QC did very well. We were a very good school, with SAC as well. You know. I have affection for SAC too. My wife taught there. You know,
So. You, having, as you said to me, not really planning to go into teaching and education, but ending up there, you must have gotten some particular pleasure from seeing some of your students perform over the years?
That's the highlight, I think, is when you see students that you actually taught going on to success, doing well. And I look at some of our MPs, for example. We've got 4 ex-students that I used to teach in those days. Glenys Hanna was a delightful child. Neville Wisdom, he was a good athlete when he was at QC. Obi Wilchcombe, Vincent Peat were all students for whom I had the greatest affection I can remember.
I'll ask you about them off camera.
And then before,
You're going to tell me good
from
things
the other
about
side
them
of the
on camera.
fence, there was, who do I recall? Earl DeVoe. He was one of students that I've always had a good relationship with Earl, even up to now. He was a super student, an excellent student in every way. Became head boy. But who else was there? Italia Johnson.
Okay.
She was a QC student. Freddie Gottlieb up in Abaco. I can't remember any others. Probably others that I've missed out. They were there.
And we're talking about people, but let me ask you this, and we were talking about this briefly before the...
Marvin Pinder, don't let me forget. Marvin.
Marvin Pinder,
Yeah.
yes. You taught literature. You taught
Yes.
English.
And language, yeah. Language,
English language and English literature. I don't know that literature gets enough attention. And I don't know, because of course I love Shakespeare and Byron and Tennyson and all the rest of them. What kind of reaction do you find that you get to literature?
Well, surprisingly, I found the students very receptive to it. When I first came out, of course, it was the GCE level,
Yes.
O-level and A-level examinations of London University overseas. So the syllabus was very, very English. And I used to think at the time that it really had very little relevance. But it was amazing. Literature of the highest order is universal. I mean, Bahamian children loved Chaucer. I used to do the prologue in Chaucer, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And plays like Macbeth and so on, which were very far removed from Bahamian experience, they loved it. They really did. And I enjoyed teaching them very much. Although I do feel and felt strongly then that the syllabus should be more relevant. And it is now, of course.
More Bahamianized.
Yes, definitely so.
But you talk about literature, high literature. Maybe it's the underlying message that resonates wherever you are in the world.
Well, it has a great civilizing influence, I think, in terms of the emotional development of children, to read literature and read good books and understand just the beauty of words and poetry and so on.
You, as I said way back when, you remain at QC for 15 years and then you end up now going to the College of the Bahamas.
Well, that was because I was tired of the desk job, to be honest, and I wanted to get back in the classroom. And so going back to COB was returning to my roots in a way, and I loved it there too. Keva Bethel was one of the dearest friends that I have.